This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agner.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I am lucky enough to be joined by Hunter Fortune and Tom Carmona of Wolfjaw. Hello, gentlemen. How are we?
You?
I'm good. Great.
Doing
I'm
well,
awesome.
man.
Good. We're all hot. It's summer. You know,
It's a little warm.
Hunter's It's a little. Well, you have a sweatshirt on. I don't know what you're doing over there. You must have great central air.
It's 65 degrees in my house right now, so.
Well, let's start with you, Tom. So anyway, Wolfjaw, by the way, let's kick off there. Wolfjaw Studios. What do you guys do? What is Wolfjaw?
Yeah. So Wolfjaw Studios, we are a video game co-development studio based out of Troy, New York, with a primary focus on online game services. And so what that means is we work with big video game studios and publishers to help develop a lot of their online tech. Think about things like matchmaking, player account systems, telemetry, sort of all the stuff that's really important to getting in the game, but not the actual core gameplay itself.
Love that. And when you guys see something explode on launch, like Helldivers or any of these other games, like, do you just go like, should have used us? Like, what? How do you guys view those, massive failures? Is that the kind of stuff that you guys safeguard against if they go if somebody uses Wolfjaw?
We try to, but when we see launches fall apart, it's not so much should have used us, and it's more, wow, I feel for you, because this stuff is hard. It's really hard to get right. If you have launched and nothing has gone wrong, the stars have aligned, because that is not a common occurrence.
Or you just don't have enough players to show that something has gone wrong.
That's great. I do remember I went to Full Sail, and I remember like the multiplayer gaming like framework being just so bizarre and like such a weird, different experience, like having to know where different things were at different times, and like it's not single player gaming from a development perspective, but we can get into that in a little bit, Hunter. So Tom, you've been there for about 5 years. You're a biz dev guy. So being a biz dev guy myself, I know it's all about relationships, right? So where did you guys start with Wolfjaw? Like, how did you get your first customer? Where'd that come from?
Yeah. So our first customer interaction with Wolfjaw actually starts well before Wolfjaw even started. So, Hunter and I and Mitch, our founder and CEO, all used to work together in the past in the video game industry. And at various points, we all split off and came back together. And so, Mitch one day called me up and was like, hey, I really want to start my own studio. Let's do this. I was like, that's cool. I'm not ready to make a jump yet, but I'm willing to help you out with, sales. And so a big part of how we ended up getting our first customer was, working our old contacts and our old relationships in our network. Our first customer, now Wolfjaw Studios didn't start till 2019. I started talking to our first customer way back in 2017. That's when the relationship really started. Back at that time, we just couldn't find ways to work together, and that was all fine. 2019, Mitch starts the company. I made an introduction for Mitch. Later in 2019, I joined up in November. And then from there, it was all about working that relationship and doing everything we could to, find ways to collaborate. So in total, it took us about 3 years to close our first customer. But from there, I think the big thing is that, that has since grown into such a massive customer and client for us, and has even spawned other clients for us, in the sense that my close relationship that I had with that client ended up leaving in 2021 and going to a new studio. And as soon as he got over there, he gave me a call and was like, hey, we'd love to figure out ways to work together. Let's do it. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story of the first one in a nutshell.
I mean, it's I always call it the friends and family plan, right? Like that's what a lot of businesses kind of start with, those previous relationships. And I mean, I guess my question is, where does that end? Like, where do you realize, like, okay, we've tapped our previous contacts, we've talked to all the people, now we have to start this new client acquisition method. Like, did you feel that at some point where you were kind of like, all right, we've tapped this out, we need to do something else? Or was it just kind of, organic over time and you kind of figured it out?
I think we've felt both of those things. I think at times that we felt that, hey, I feel like we've tapped out our network, but then realizing that, you know, using your network doesn't mean getting a deal with the person who's in your network, right? So a big thing that we tend to focus on is we try to go to a lot of conferences, but we're very focused on what conferences we go to, right? So in the video game world, you have conferences like GDC, DICE, you have XDev, and a bunch of others, Gamescom in Europe, all that stuff. But we prioritize focusing on, hey, where are the people who we actually want to meet? Where are they going? And so for us, we know that DICE is our best conference. And so that's where we go and that's where we focus our time. And we utilize our networks to meet other people. So a great example is in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, we were in DICE in Vegas, and it was Mitch Hunter and I hanging out at the hotel bar, just meeting up with one of our friends, and all of a sudden someone from Bungie just came in and joined the conversation because they knew someone that we were talking to, and lo and behold, a couple of years later, now we get to support Bungie, which is really cool. So, I always say that, like, nurturing your relationships is the most important thing. Never stop doing it. Yes, there's a point where you're not going to be able to tap your connections for work directly, but there's always ways to utilize your network. And I think the other big thing, just for us really quickly, is like, our big focus has always been on our brand and on our honesty. So our networks work for us, where, we've had people call us and say, like, hey, we've heard that you guys are the best in the business and we need to talk to you. Can we set up some time to chat?
Hmm. Well, I mean, that is a good kind of throw over to Hunter. I mean, how have you guys done that? I mean, it's not easy to do, right? I mean, you mentioned how tough it is to do online infrastructure to begin with. Like, as the head of technology for Wolfjaw, how have you done that? How have you guys like ensured that you are the bar that people want to, hit?
Yeah, I mean, on the front side of it, it's kind of what Tom just said. It's being honest and it's being candid. We have lost business because we've told them this is how much it's going to cost and this is how long it's going to take, and that's not an answer that they want to hear. They end up going with someone else, and Tom and I kind of joke with each other. We'll say they'll be back in 6 months to a year because we told them the truth. We didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. We told them what it's actually going to take to get something done. Beyond that, just holding a high bar for ourselves. We've poured a lot of energy into ensuring that our engineering and production processes are top tier, not only for the engineers internally that we work with, but then also trying to have some of that rub off on the customer teams that we work with as well. Sometimes
Hmm.
customers just want us to be hands on keyboard. Sometimes they want our expertise, whether it's technical expertise or process expertise, and we show up and we deliver and we do it consistently, and that turns into a good reputation over time.
I love that. So this question will be for both of you guys, but I'll go with Hunter first. How is the technology offering, or how is the product that you guys are delivering changed since that first customer? Or is it the same kind of service and same kind of product you've been delivering, for the last 5 or 6
It
years?
definitely has changed over time. The core product itself of like we're going to give you developers that specialize in back-end services for games is relatively the same, but some of the soft edges on that have changed as time has gone by. So when we started off, it was just engineers showed up, sat down, and wrote code. Um, After we hit a certain threshold in size, we realized that we needed to start adding production into the mix. So, for folks not in the game space, they can commonly think of them as product owners or product managers. We call them producers here in the games industry. Them helping to ensure that communication is stellar, that we have good milestones set, that we're holding ourselves accountable, has really improved the quality of the product over time. And it's something that studios that we work with really appreciate now because it's not just the technical expertise that we're providing. More recently, our customer profile has generally been customers that are well established, have good funding, either through VC, publishers, whatever it might be. We've been rather inaccessible to smaller studios, whether it's indies or just individual developers out there trying to make a game. They can't afford Wolfjaw services. So, something that we've started to do relatively recently over the past year or so is put together a suite of tools that you don't need to retain Wolfjaw's service arm to use to help build the back end. You can instead lean on some of the tools that we've built using the aggregate of knowledge that we've built over the years. That one's a little bit more interesting because
Hmm.
we're moving into almost, as Wolfjaw is a pure B2B business. This is almost in a way a B2C, or it's a lot more of a B2C, even if it's not technically one,
Hmm.
than the space that we've traditionally operated in. But it's exciting to be able to service more people.
I love that. Tom, same question to you. How has your approach changed over the years? How has the customer changed? How has what you're offering them changed? Like, what's different now than it was when you guys started?
Yeah, I think you know, not to beat a dead horse, but I think Hunter kind of hit the nail right on the head with the way he explained it. And I'm just going to summarize it very succinctly, which is we've really moved from putting, developers in seats to delivering on our expertise in gaming and how it affects like holistically the projects that our clients are trying to get done. That's been the biggest shift for us, I think, in terms of customers and how they've changed over time. For us in the beginning, yes, we had our, like I talked about it before, we had our network and that was great, but we were also working with a lot of like smaller contracts and things like that. So a lot of our first deals were 6 month, 12-month contracts. And over the last year or two, year and a half, I'd say, we've actually made a huge shift over to very long-term contracts. So we've been able to, work with our clients to have plans for 3 years out, which is really cool and a giant shift for us and how we think about how we staff different projects and the different roles that we can accomplish within those projects, ownership of certain things over. So that's also been a pretty big shift for us, but all enabled by what Hunter mentioned, just really bringing that process along and having good producers and just a really good process.
Hunter, what is your, I guess, and you can only talk about things that are out in the public, but what has been your proudest, most fun, game that you guys have worked on? What's your marquee that if you were to tell somebody what you do at Wolfjaw, you would say, this is the one that set the bar for us?
I don't know if it's necessarily setting the bar, but it's the example I go to because A, it's public and we can talk about it, but B, it's probably the most widely accessible and people know about it, even if they're not in the games industry. But we built virtually the entire backend for Among Us. So Among Us blew up in 2020. They didn't have a lot of features. They didn't have an account system. They didn't have an inventory system. They didn't have any social features. It was just hop on and play. They brought us on to build all of those, and we were able to pull together something relatively quickly and ship it and really improve the quality of life playing that game. And it's super cool. I mean, I live in Brooklyn, so I'm walking around all the time, and you see around like Halloween time, there's kids make their Among Us themed jack o' lanterns and put them out on the stoops. It's cool to be a part of something that is such a cultural phenomenon.
I love that. My kids have the stuffed animal or plushies of Among Us, and they were just playing it this weekend, I think. So yeah, it's still up and running and still kicking ass, I think. So what about you, Tom? Same game or you got another one?
Um, I will just say, the Among Us story is one of my favorites ever. I tell that one all the time too. But I will say, just on like a personal level, I think it's really cool that we get to do a lot of work with 2K and all their various projects and stuff like that. Just because, I mean, I grew up playing all those games and everything, so I think it's awesome and really fun. It's hard for me to pinpoint one because I'm a little bit living my 13-year-old self's dream right now when I get to talk to all the people that I talk to on a, daily, weekly, monthly basis. So it's really hard to pick just one.
Yeah, I think both of you guys are living like, most gamers' dreams, including multiple of my children. What's been the biggest struggle? This would be another one for both of you guys. Tom, just tell me, as a biz dev guy in the game space, is it the industry that's the hard part? Is it the kind of, cutthroat nature of the industry? Is it, reaching out to these networks? Like, what is the biggest kind of thing that you've had to get better at over the years to be as good as a biz dev guy as you are today? What have you improved on over the years? What's been your hardest thing to get better at?
Yeah, I will say there's probably a couple things. So I mean, one thing is that like the video game industry, while huge in dollars, is actually really small in terms of the number of people and studios around. And so, breaking into that world, right? That network is tough. Figuring out effective ways to do that is really tough. And so I think early on in my career, I leaned pretty heavily on a lot of other folks to help make introductions and all that kind of stuff. And now these days, it's a lot easier for me to walk into a room and have a story to tell and be able to connect with folks, know what they want to hear or what they don't want to hear. And even if I don't know it beforehand, I figure it out pretty quickly while we're talking. And so I would say that's been the biggest change is just, that part of it. Yeah. Did I miss the second part to that question?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't even know if there was. I mean, I asked it. I don't know if there's a second part. Hunter, same question to you, maybe from a tech perspective or just any perspective. Like, what's been the biggest struggle for you, kind of building these big infrastructures for these, AAA massive titles, or even the smaller ones? What's been your biggest
Yeah, I
struggle?
don't think it's so much the technical problems that are the hard ones. I mean, not to say that they're not hard, and I don't want to undersell that at all because they are, and that's why Wolfjaw exists. But the softer problems are the tougher ones. It's figuring out how to interface with every studio that we work with. Every customer has their own quirks and has their own unique ways of working. There is a pretty hard challenge in trying to make sure that everyone on staff at Wolfjaw understands that yes, there is a best way to do things. There's an industry best practice, and then there's what can you accomplish with the customer that you're working with. It's very rarely going to be the industry best practice thing. We have to adapt quite a bit. So being chameleons and being adaptable is probably one of the most difficult things that we've come up across. But in the same breath, we've done a good job at that. And I think one of the things that Wolfshaw excels at, tying this back to the biz dev process and everything being based on a reputation, is it's not always sunshine and rainbows. I've had some pretty uncomfortable calls with customers where they're unhappy with the level of service that we've provided. But I think the difference at Wolfjaw is when we get that feedback, we act on it and we shape things up virtually immediately. And
Hmm.
going from an angry studio head in a call in April, maybe we follow back up in June and they're like, how did you do that? Everything is amazing now. And that's really done wonders to bolster our reputation because people know that even if things aren't perfect all the time, this is a studio that's going to make sure to make things right and work with us to deliver an excellent product.
Love that. Well, what's next? I mean, Tom, what's on your radar for improving biz dev at Wolfjaw? Like, what are you trying new methods? Do you have tools you're using to reach out to people? Is it just pounding that network? Like, what is next for you when it comes to improving it at Wolfjaw?
Video game world domination, right?
That's it,
No,
baby.
but I would say on the biz dev side for us right now, the biggest thing is, we've made a lot of really great, updates to our process on the engineering side and how we work with clients and all of that stuff. And now the focus is going to be on the biz dev and operation side as well. And what I mean by that, it's thinking about biz dev outside of just biz dev and thinking more about the growth of the company as a whole, right? How do we partner better with our community management team? How do we partner better with our recruiting team? We're all going to conferences, but for different reasons. How can we collaborate and try to do things better together? Hosting hackathons for developers so that we can potentially find some new talent, but also maybe find a new client if a game gets built that's really cool. So trying to figure out how to really work all of those departments together in one cohesive way, I think is the next big thing for Wolfjaw and what we're trying to figure out.
Just to follow up on that one, how do you guys treat partnerships at Wolfjaw? Like, how do you handle them? Is it like a specific? I mean, I think you mentioned having somebody specifically that's what they do, but like, how important are they to you guys versus like, individual kind of targeting exercises from biz dev and sales? Have you guys fully embraced kind of partnerships and really going after them for their leverage on their network? Like, how do you guys approach partnerships in general?
Yeah, you're talking partnerships with like other companies in the
Yeah,
industry.
or with whoever, right? I mean, with any,
Yeah.
yeah, with any game company or anybody else.
I think one of the biggest things for us on that front is we have always considered ourselves to be Switzerland, where we are always the neutral party, right? There Hunter touched on this earlier, but there are like a thousand different options for all the different things that you could possibly want to build, right? You look at something like fleet management or game servers or anything like that, and there's so many different options. So we want to be friends with everybody because we don't know what our clients are going to end up using. But so to that point, building relationships and partnerships with those companies and other folks in the industry is wildly important to us. And yeah, there are lots of times where we'll go after business together with a potential partner or something like that. There have been times where we're working with a client and they might say, hey, we really want to use this specific service from this specific company, and we can step in and try to help get them a discount because we're really good friends with them, and let's all work it out together. My true belief is that at the end of the day, a rising tide raises all ships, but that only works if everybody's on board and everybody wants to help everybody kind of get raised up, and we're always on board for that. So I personally, I think partnerships wildly important. So
Love that. Hunter, back to the question about what's next, what's improving, kind of what's on the horizon for the tech side. Like, what is burning on your side to make sure you bring to Wolfjaw or that you get better at in technology? Like, what's next for you on your side?
Yeah, so I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but we're working on a backend toolkit that doesn't require Wolfjaw's services arm to help you build a backend. And that's either using this toolkit in isolation or using individual pieces of it to stitch together some of those options that Tom was just talking about, because there's a lot of tooling on the market today. We've kind of made a living by stitching it all together with our services arm, but being able to expand business outside of our services arm is definitely something that's on my mind. Beyond that, we've forever been in a niche of backend services development. We've said no to a lot of work when people come to us and they ask us to do things like gameplay related stuff. We've been shoehorned into doing it a couple times and have found that our engineers really like doing that. I mean, that's the stereotypical fun side of game development. You're doing stuff that's on the screen. So we're starting to explore what it looks like to kind of expand our disciplines. We want to do it in a smart way. We want to make sure that we're not everything to everyone, because then you become nothing to everyone. And we want to make sure that we perform anything that we do with excellence. So picking our battles really smartly around the types of work that we're going to start saying yes to that we've traditionally said no to, which in turn helps folks like Tom sell more because there's more opportunities on the table then.
Got it. And Hunter, what's the landscape look like now compared to when you guys started technology wise? Is there just, is it completely different? Are you guys using different, either coding methodologies or tools internally, or like just is it shifted tremendously over the past however many, microservices came and had their day at some point, and there's all these just like different things that popped up along the way. Like technologically speaking, how different is it now what you guys doing versus when you started?
It's hard to say how big of a shift there's been because we've always worked with such a wide variety of customers, and every single one of their tech stacks is its own unique thing. So as time goes by, we've seen it all. Name a programming language, name a paradigm. We've probably worked in it. I think the thing that you're seeing a lot more of now is off the shelf platforms and tools, and each of them have their strengths and weaknesses. I think the biggest issue that we see with many of them is they're one size fits all, and games are all unique. I was literally just talking about how every game backend is its own unique thing, and that's because every game backend coupling is servicing a unique game experience. So I think that there's going to be more development over the next couple of years, and as we see some of these platforms mature a bit, I think they'll become wildly more useful than they are today. Not to say that they're not already, but they'll continue to find their footing, and it'll continue to be easier and easier for anybody to build a multiplayer game.
How have you, I'm not going to assume your level of tech savvy, but how have you kind of been able to sell and do business development with something that is very technical and is very, you're not even like to Hunter's point earlier, you're not selling gameplay services, or traditionally you're not, like, it's stuff you can see on the screen. How do you stay locked in to like a technical conversation that you have to have that's maybe above your depth or something you haven't seen before, or I mean, and again, not assuming what you know or don't know, but how does a business development guy sell a super technical product like that? Is it staying in, kind of in the high end of things, or do you kind of are you able to get in there and really talk, shop with these folks?
Yeah, so this is a really great question. My philosophy on this has always been that I our biz dev department, especially me, need to have a really solid relationship with our engineering department. So Hunter is basically my partner in crime when it comes to, biz dev and working through our deal pipeline and all of that stuff. Typically, like in any kind of like initial conversation, I'm able to talk very surface level, right? I can talk about the services we provide, the different technologies that we've used and all that stuff. I won't get into the nitty gritty, and I'm very upfront and honest about that as soon as the conversation starts. I typically say, "Hey, my name's Tom. I'm not an engineer, but I'll be able to keep up." Then from there, our process is, so we'll do that first intro meeting. Then our next step is always to have a deep dive technical call, and that's when I pull in my experts. So Hunter, Joey on our team, or Matt, or Scott, or I can't list every single person, but I'll pull in those folks, and that's when they can actually deep dive and talk about the tech. So for me, the short answer is we have our engineering teams very embedded and involved in the biz dev process from that perspective. They're helping to build out proposals, helping to negotiate on different parts and all that stuff. I don't make them worry about all the legal contract stuff because that's boring, and that's the thing that I get to deal with. But yeah, when it comes to actually like working with clients and negotiating and figuring that out, engineering is very heavily involved. It
That
also
makes a lot.
helps that I used to be a technical recruiter.
That probably helps a little bit. That makes a
So
lot of sense, though. That makes a lot of sense, and I love the way you laid that out. All right, last question to both you guys. I'll ask you individually. Hunter, if you could do anything on Earth, and it's not really fair because Tom gets to hear this question first, but Hunter, if you could do anything on Earth and you knew you wouldn't fail, what would it be?
Anything on Earth, and I knew I wouldn't fail. I'm gonna have to say, which is very fitting given how hot it is outside today, solve the climate crisis. Make Earth a great place to live for generations to come.
Beautiful. Now, yours better be very altruistic, Tom, or people are gonna raise the pitchforks. You better say something about world
all
hunger
right, all
or
right, here we go.
same question to you, Tom. Anything on Earth and you knew you couldn't fail, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that these days, there's a lot of hate and anger in the world, and if I could just get everyone in the world to approach every situation with empathy and compassion for the other person, I would do that. Some might say that's a little bit of like a villainous superpower that I'm asking for because I'm asking to be able to basically control how people talk. I don't want to do that. I just want to, have people understand that, hey, the person across the room or the table or the webcam, they're going through some stuff and you probably don't know everything that's going on. So
Beautiful. And well, we all know there's no hate in video games and everybody's super nice online when they play together. So
That's
yeah,
what the industry is known for.
yeah, just go.
it's just known for being the nicest group of people that are, especially like Call of Duty and those. It's just great community of
I was
people.
gonna say, just hop into chat in any PvP game and you'll see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
kindness of humanity.
you'll be renewed in your faith in humanity. Well, you guys are fantastic, and I'm glad we're friends now, and we're gonna stay friends whether you like it or not. Tom, how do people reach out to you directly if people want to hear anything, reach out about anything they heard today?
You can reach out to me via email. I don't know if you want me to
Go
say it
for it. Yeah,
here.
I'll put in the notes too, but whatever you wanna
Cool.
connect with.
Reach out to me via email, tom@wolfjawstudios.com, or follow me on literally any social media at judokegs.
Beautiful. Hunter, where can we find you, buddy?
Same as Tom via email, hunter@wolfjawstudios.com. I am unfortunately not as active as Tom is on social media, but you can find me on LinkedIn,
All right. And how do we? Is it just wolfjawstudios.com, right?
wolfjawstudios.com.
Yep.
Beautiful. Well, this was great. Like I said, I get to live vicariously through you two gentlemen, and I think you're doing a great job, and I'm very impressed, and I think everybody else should be too. So, thank you for being on. I'm sure people heard something that they can relate to today, or hopefully kind of go back to, and especially Tom with the relationships are key. Keep the good fight going, and if you guys can get outside I guess you shouldn't go outside. You're gonna melt. So
I've
let's
got a
just say
sweatshirt on, remember?
I was gonna say you have a sweat. I don't even know what you're doing out there. You better like it must be free. I need to come visit your house because it's hot as hell in my house. All right. Well, you guys have a good rest of your day. Have a good rest of your week. Thank you for being on. We'll talk again soon. All right.
Jay, thanks
Awesome.
for
Thanks,
having
guys.
us.
Cheers.
Take
See you
care.
guys. Thanks, guys. See ya.